I'm the Senior Vice President for Programs here at the Gardner Institute, and I thank you again on behalf of my colleagues for joining us today. We have, I've asked for those of you who just joined, if you say hello and tell us what attracted you to this session, we appreciate it. And then as we go through, put your questions in the chat as well. So let me tell you a little bit about the agenda we have today. It's a full one. I'm going to do introductions for all of our speakers, and I'm going to share with you the names and positions of some people who won't be here, but you'll be working with if you join us. We're going to do, actually, Dr. Drew Koch is going to do who we are. We're going to talk about transformative leadership. Then we're going to talk about leading student success in academic units and the role of the Chief Academic Officer in innovation transformation, in innovating transformation, and hopefully your questions. I will pause at the end of each little section to see if you have questions, but please put them in the chat as you think of them. Next slide. Katie? Uh-oh. Did Katie freeze? There we go. So let me introduce you to some of the participants you'll be talking, or facilitators you'll be hearing from today. First, I'm going to introduce my colleagues that work at the Institute. Dr. John Gardner, who is the founder with the Gardner Institute. He and his wife, Betsy Barefoot, Dr. Barefoot, founded the Gardner Institute. And then Dr. Vicki McGillen, who is Associate Vice President here and has worked seamlessly probably through every project we've ever done. She's a great team player. And then we have two fellows with us here today. Dr. Paul Lepore, who's a fellow, he works at Arizona State University. And then Dr. Suzanne Wilson Summers, who is recently prepared to retire, but she's a fellow and we're glad that she's with us as well. And throughout this program, you will hear the voice of Katie Locke. Katie is the Director of Marketing and Communications here and Engagement here at the Gardner Institute. And last but not least, I want to introduce our CEO, Dr. Drew Koch. Dr. Koch has been here, well, I won't guess how many years because I just forgot. But anyway, Drew, let me turn it over to you, Dr. Koch.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. It's great to be here any year, but I've been here since 2010, at least occupationally and career-wise, and been affiliated with the Institute before it was an institute, and even before it was necessarily a thought in John and Betsy's minds, since I had them as professors in the early 90s at the University of South Carolina. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the Gardner Institute itself. If we'd advance to the next slide, please, and give you a broad overview about the organization that is hosting this information session. We are located, headquarters, if you will, in Brevard, North Carolina. We're 25 years old, at least we were last October, so we're older than that now. We celebrate our 25th anniversary. And we are a not-for-profit organization, very focused on helping colleges, universities, systems, philanthropic organizations, and higher ed organizations improve teaching, learning, student success, and completion. Our broader goal is to help institutions and systems make sure that every learner thrives, earns a credential or a degree of high value, and goes on to live a highly fulfilling life after graduation. And really, the purpose for doing this is to make sure that all students have expanded opportunity and success in post-secondary education and life thereafter. So that's our mission. And the two engagements that we'll be talking about today are part of a broader set of offerings that are focused around that mission. Now, to date, we have worked with over 720 colleges and universities across the United States that have collectively enrolled, at least based on the year in which we worked with them. Some were working over 5 years, right? But on the year that we initiated work, when you cumulatively add that up, as you can see, it's over 5 million undergraduates. The element on 29 chief academic officers, don't let that number fool you. The 722 institutions did not have only 29 chief academic officers, right? They each had their own. There are 29 who have been involved in us in one of the endeavors that we've talked about, and we're talking about adding to those cohorts over time. So, but broadly, over 720 colleges and university, over 5 million undergrads in those institutions. Just shy of a third have been community colleges, 2-year primarily associate's degrees granting institutions, and just under 3/4 have been 4-year institutions. And then when you split that out in terms of control, um, publics account for just under 3/4, independents account for a little over a quarter, and proprietary slash for profit or uh, publicly shared institutions, as one preferred to call itself, is under 1%. So we've overwhelmingly worked with non-for-profit institutions. So it gives you a real sense. We work with everybody, and from a standpoint of selectivity, we've had some of the world's top tier AAU institutions. We've had some of the nation's top tier 2-year open access community colleges, and every institution in between, modalities, some completely online, some blended, some more traditional face to face. So it gives you a broad sense as we talk about leadership and work with institutions, that we really have learned some things that span sectors and also some things that are unique to some sectors, right? So on the next side, you'll see a little bit in terms of the outcomes we've realized through some of the work that we've done. What we have done disproportionately with institutions and teams of leaders, and we define leaders broadly, teams of leaders for institutions is help them identify areas where they can build on strengths to improve various aspects of the student experience. In this case, this is around the first college year. And then over time, implement those plans to a high degree to improve both first to second year success outcomes as well as 4, 5, and 6-year grad rates. What you'll see here is work and an analysis done by an external evaluator for work that we had done with 150 institutions in first year redesign. And you can see over a 5-year period that the institutions with which we worked that self-reported implementing plans to a high degree at a 5.62 percentage point increase in first to second year retention rates. You'll also see that fortunately many years later, you have to wait for cohorts to graduate. You have to also wait for some of the data to show up on iPads, that we saw significant increases correlated with those increases in first year rates in both 4, 5, and 6-year grad rates. Same external evaluator did the analysis about 8 years after they did the initial analysis on retention rate outcomes. So the good news is, if you help teams develop a plan, you develop people as they're developing that plan, and they move on to implement said plans to a high degree, good things happen from a retention and grad rate outcome. On the next slide, I want to share a bit, and I'm also going to share why we're sharing this, right? The last time we did this information overview, a few folks said, it'd be really good if we had some information on return on investment so that as we make the case to engage and work with the Gardner Institute, we had something to show for this. All right, well, fair enough. That's a fine request. We factored that into this session. We didn't do the research between now and then. Actually, the research has been done for a good while now. We've been doing an analysis around ROI and cost benefit analysis around work with the Gardner Institute. I will say it's a tad dated. Our fees for participation, depending on engagement, have gone up a bit since we did the analysis. So have tuition and fees at institutions, right? So, it's perhaps time for a refresh on this. But what we can tell you is based on the analysis that was done at that time, for every dollar paid to the Gardner Institute to engage with work that we were doing, particularly around first year redesign, institutions saw real returns of $26.40 in retention related tuition and fee revenues. What's not in here is any performance based funding, any auxiliary fees, We just got this from the data that the institutions reported to IPEDS in both enrollment and financial tables, verified with them also their proportion of in-state, out-of-state, do it different types of fees in district, out of district. And then we're able to do, I think, a fairly robust analysis on all this. Now, we are not promising you that you will see this if you engage with us, right? We are providing this simply because folks in the last overview asked for some evidence. And good news, we already had it. So it's here now, right? So bottom line, it gives you a little bit of context on both our mission, our function, the outcomes correlated with our work to date. And I'm emphasizing the term correlated. So let's go on to the next slide real quick. There are other things we do, right, in addition to work with institutions and work with developing leaders at institutions. Three recent examples around scholarship are, reflected here. You'll note on the right-hand side, John's memoir, where he focused on innovation and launching the first-year experience movement. You'll note a multi-author book that John, Mike Rosenberg, and I worked on collectively to compile, edit, and we also wrote a few chapters, but we had many other chapter authors as well around the transfer experience, and then a recent publication that I did a solo authorship on transforming the Gateway course experience in Gateway courses. So we are a learning organization. A lot of that is actually reflected in what we're offering now, right? And some of the things that we're going to discuss today. We learned that it's very important to be intentional about focusing on leadership development. We don't do that work to write about you. Actually, a lot of times when we do that work, we write with you. And that's why in a number of these books, particularly the transfer experience one, there's multiple authors. But that's another example of the types of things that the Institute does and brings into the work that we're doing. Jumping to the next slide, please. So I am getting to that point in time where I need to define terms, right? And particularly what we mean by transformative leadership in the conversation today. The term transformation is like bandied about a lot these days. As a matter of fact, I feel like there's probably no day that goes by that I at least don't get one email about transforming something. And some days, multiple emails about transforming or being transformative. So it's important to define terms for purpose of our conversation now. We use the term transformation and the phrase transformative in conjunction with that mission that I shared earlier, right? We are moving and helping institutions move towards being transformative. And that means transforming student success. And what that really means, digging into that deeper, is creating a condition in the future where all learners can thrive, as I mentioned earlier, and eventually earn a degree or credential of high value and go on to lead fulfilling lives, right? So there's great congruence in how we're defining the term here, all around student success and our mission. It's all about the mission for us. So transformative leadership is helping to develop leaders to help them advance that mission, that view. And in our work to date with those over 700 institutions, we've actually not met a leader who doesn't want to be able to do that better, even if they're doing that exceptionally well. So we're not coming from a deficit framing thinking you're not doing that already. You may be doing that well, but with the spirit of continuous improvement behind us, we know we can all continue to do better. And we also know, with a nod to Shirley Malcolm, is even if we're doing it exceptionally well, that fixed don't stay fixed, right? So what we're doing and what we're discussing today are a number of areas where we're focusing specifically on developing leaders as learners in communities of practice and in community with one another to achieve that transformative vision. So again, it's defined many different ways out there. We have good colleagues across the academy who talk about transforming institutions so they're financially sound. That's great too, right? And that connects with some of the student success work. But we really, really mean that our transformation vision is focused on making sure that learners thrive and that institutions thrive in the process of making sure that happens. Now, with that in mind, we have to help institutions create the conditions for that, right? And that's why we're here to talk with you today. So I'm going to turn to my colleagues to pick up from here to talk about uh, work that we're discussing today around transformative leadership around student success, and that we invite you to consider as an option for yourself over the next year in conjunction with the Gardner Institute.
Thank you, Dr. Koch. I was looking in the chat, didn't see questions for you at this time, so I'm going to move forward. No, no, go back one more. I'm sorry, I said four. My bad. So we're going to talk about two opportunities today. One is leading academic units. We have deans, department chairs, directors of academic units that interface with faculty, and we are helping you to figure out some of your power, your points of power, and ways to get this work done. And then the second one we're going to talk about is the CEO Innovation Community of Practice for provosts, vice presidents of academic affairs, and on a larger level, leading a campus through innovative work and innovative ideas that come through transformation or from maybe assignments and goals of the institution. The CAO position, with the deans and department chairs, you have peers on campus that you can connect with. CAO position tends to be a lonely one as you're the only person. And so this gives you a greater community to work with. Next slide, please. So the first one we're going to talk about is leading student success in academic units. The next slide gives you a little bit of who our facilitators are. So you've already met, well, I've introduced Dr. Paul Lepore, Suzanne Wilson Summers, Dr. Wilson Summers, and myself. We have one member that was not able to make it today, and his name is Scott Newman, and he's a part of this team. And Dr. Summers, I think I turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Felita. Here we are. So I'm really happy to be here with you all. I can say as a CAO that as many wonderful plans and ideas as I might come up with, the rubber really meets the road down at the divisional level, down at the unit level, because that's where faculty live. So this community of practice is very much about helping to empower those leaders, chairs, deans, as my colleague Paul likes to say, adjective enhanced chairs and deans, to really support their institution student success work, as well as perhaps their own, the provost may have some student success ideas and directives as well, but particularly to build a faculty culture of collaboration and really empowered ownership of student success work. And Felita used the word, she talked about the importance of building a network and the importance of building community. That is very much at the heart of how we're thinking of this work. Sometimes it is a wonderful thing to have people who are not at your campus, but who are in similar roles to talk with, bounce ideas off. So we will be building time in for that as well. But the overall goal of this community of practice is to engage these unit academic leaders in determining what are impactful practices and initiatives that might be relevant for their own units, identifying their own levers of influence, and constructing data-informed cultures within their units. Next slide, please. So again, this will give you an idea of who we envision as participants for this community of practice. Again, deans, but that includes assistant and associate deans, department and division chairs, and again, assistant and associate chairs, depending on how your institution is organized. But also directors of schools or programs. I mean, there are lots of organizational structures, but essentially individuals who are leading student success initiatives within academic units. But we want to emphasize a sort of faculty connection, the instructional connection as well. Next slide, please. And this will give you an idea of the structure. This will be Paul will talk a little bit more about the structure of the community of practice, but this will give you a sense of some of the issues that we'll be addressing. Each of the virtual sessions are going to be 90 minutes. They'll cover a particular topic. We are working hard to build a lot of interaction and idea sharing. But some of the things we'll be talking about are assessing student success at your institution. Your institution probably has a strategic plan. How will your unit student success work align with that strategic plan? How do you use data to identify barriers to student success? Where do you find that data? What's the relevant data? How do you talk about data in a non-threatening way that engages people? How do you define student success as a unit priority? I think one of the most important things we're going to be talking about is building and leading a coalition of change within your unit. And then also out of the vast array of possible student success strategies, how do you find the one that is workable within your unit, that's really getting to the core objectives that you may have? Implementing and managing complex change, because this is change not only within units, but it's also cross-divisional, collaborative change as well. And then how do we sustain student success efforts in the long term, so that this doesn't become one more initiative that we do for a bit and then we move on, sort of in keeping with Drew's idea about institutional transformative change. And next slide, please. And I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Paul Laporte.
Thanks, Suzanne. So I will do the kickoff in October as part of the Gardner Institute Symposium. That's a place where we're going to have a pre-conference workshop. We hope you all can come and meet your fellow community of practice participants. And then, as Suzanne mentioned, we're going to meet monthly for 90 minutes on Wednesdays from 3 to 4:30 from December until June. The goal on this is to provide you the brass tacks that you need to be able to lead effective student success initiatives on your particular campus. So each of our meetings will not only talk about the most data-driven and research-supported ways to improve student success, but to address your specific issues and needs as part of that community of practice. We're going to give you the tools so when you go back to your campus, you can start moving toward the initiative that you want to implement. And by the time June 2026 rolls around, we are confident that you'll have not only the toolkit that you need to be successful, but you'll have a community of others who are also working on some really heady problems, but you will have not only the mindset, but the information to be successful. We're going to provide you materials both before and after each session. It should be a lively, as Suzanne mentioned, interactive 90 minutes that hopefully every month you see as one of the highlights of your month. Next slide, please. And then finally, the big question, what is the cost? It's $4,445 per person, which also includes the workshop, the pre-conference workshop in Chicago. And I can tell you, I've been working with the Gardner Institute since 2015. Every minute that I have spent with Gardner has been money and time well spent. And we hope that you see that the same here. It's a place for you to not only develop as a leader, but for you to be able to move your institution forward in all the ways that we know make sense. So that's it for our community of practice. Let me kick it back to Felita.
Thank you, Dr. Summers and Dr. Laporte. And I want to just add one piece to that. This is for colleges, universities, community college, technical college, public and private, and my colleague reminded me, and for profit. So we do work with everyone. Katie, is there anything you need to add to the current slide? You said no? Okay, let's go to the next slide then. So the next we're going to talk a little bit about our second opportunity. I didn't check the chat for questions. Check the chat and see if there are any questions. Well, let me just ask Suzanne or Paul, whoever wants to answer, what's the one thing you would say to a person that's trying to make a decision about joining this community of practice that we just discussed? What would you say to that person on the fence?
I think, Paul, I'll share my ideas and jump in, but I think I would say, I'd highly encourage you to do it. I think, first of all, not only the knowledge and the skill building and really being able to contextualize change for your institutional, your unit environment is critical. But some of us have been in cohorted leadership programs in the past, in the network, in the community. I really want to emphasize the community and community of practice. The information sharing is just invaluable. Paul, do you have any thoughts you
let
want
me
to
add
add?
just a couple of other things. I don't think in some cases we take enough time to develop ourselves as leaders, and to be able to use this opportunity as an investment in yourselves will have payoffs. That's for sure. The other piece is, and I'm at Arizona State University, we're a big place. There are times in which I would love to have a critical friend, a colleague that I can just ask those questions that can give me kind of straight information that I probably maybe not getting as easily in my own institution. So to be able to have a cross institution working group to be able to help you with your problems of practice, I think is a really important way to invest in yourself, but also at the same time your institution. And I also would say, as a final thing, it's fun. It's working with the Gardner Institute is fun, and it gives me joy to think about the possibilities of what I can do at my institution when I hear about what's happening in other places, how I can be supported in my own development as a leader and as a scholar. And so we're really looking forward to this. This is the first time we've run this community of practice, and Suzanne and Scott and Felita are wonderful co-conspirators in this. So I think for my own sake, the four of us are having a ball, and we want you to join them.
Yes, we are.
May I add one more thing? I think, sometimes we often do professional development within our sectors. So, community and technical colleges might go to their own AACC events or other events. We often do that. APLU, we have lots of sector associations. My experience is there is great value in having sort of cross-sector learning and being able to learn from each other across sectors. So I really encourage you, wherever you come from, not to let the sort of mix of institutional types, to see that as a real asset.
Thank you to both of you. There's a question in the chat, Katie. What is the typical number in a cohort? And what is the typical, if any, composition in terms of types of institutions and positions? Can I let you address that, please?
Sure, I'm happy to. Thanks, Felita. So this is the first time we've done this leading academic units cohort community of practice. So we can't really say what is typical. What we can do is sort of refer back to what we've had with the Chief Academic Officers community of practice, which Dr. McGillen is going to talk about in just a moment. And we can also look at sort of what historically, as Drew talked about, what are the institution types we've worked with. So historically, we've worked with about 30% from community colleges and about 70% from four-year institutions. I believe that we are looking for a cohort for this particular group between 25 and 50. So we would expect probably to have a 30 to 40 percent of those coming from community technical colleges. This community is open to not chief academic officers. I knew I was going to say that because it's sitting on my screen. Is open to deans, directors, and chair people from graduate schools either. So we are looking to have a more diverse community than what we have done in the chief academic office innovation community of practice. And I think that we will see some really great interactions from the diversity that we're anticipating in this group. Hopefully that answers your question, Tom. Let us know if you have more questions.
Okay.
And
Thank you. Thank you so much, Katie. So let's turn our attention to the Chief Academic Officers Innovation Community of Practice. We've done this one I think we're on our 4th cohort now. So let me tell you a little bit about the facilitators. Dr. John Gardner is a part of the facilitation, and I've introduced to you Dr. Vicki McGillan at the beginning. The one partner that's not with us, not here on the call today, is Dr. Brandon Smith, and he's an associate vice president with Gardner Institute. Great partnerships. So to give Vicki as much time as possible, Vicki, tell us a little bit about the CAO innovation community.
Well, I'm actually going to ask John if he can turn his video on and would like to lead us off.
Welcome, John. Dr. Gardner.
Thank you very much. I was able to turn those on. Vicki, I'll do this with you. I'm delighted to have you here to do this. And of course, Felita has been with us for the past 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, this, as you've heard, is a process for institutional chief academic officers. And by that, we mean the officer who is at the top of the hierarchy to manage the academic enterprise, both undergraduate and graduate, for the organization. We do this for any type of post-secondary, regionally accredited college or university. We've just finished, or we're finishing this week, as a matter of fact, our 4th cohort. The first one we did was restricted to small, nonprofit, private liberal arts colleges. That was our test group. And based on that success, we decided to expand this to all types of post-secondary institutions. And as you just heard from Felita, we've had representatives, and Katie, from every type of post-secondary institution. The smallest cohort we had was 6 participants, and as I recall, all of them were female, and the largest was 13. So we don't have any idea what size this next one will be, but all of them will have in common that they are chief academic officers. We do not have any assistant or associate or vice. We debate about that each year, and because those members of the CAO team are really important, but we want this to be exclusively for the chief academic officer. Now, having mentioned chief academic, I wanted you to know initially that our aspiration for this is to help transform the chief academic officer into a dual role of chief innovation officer for the institution at which she or he serves. Now, we do this for a number of reasons, but we are recognizing that the historic pattern for bringing people into this job has often been to have someone who will stay the course, who will keep the trains running on time, who won't rock the boat, and who will reassure, especially the faculty who are nervous about administrative change, that basically things are not going to change. Well, we believe that things must change. They do need to change in concert with the faculty and the staff and the students, but the ways we've been doing things are no longer what's needed, broadly speaking, in what I think we all have to realize is a totally new era of the history of American higher education, which began in 1630. We've had a number of phases in this history, and we have just entered a new one for which the water is uncharted as of January 20th. And therefore, we believe that we need more than ever chief academic officers who have the insight, the courage, the resilience, the creativity, the flexibility to lead the leadership of charting these uncharted, unpredictable waters. We will meet one time a month for 2 hours on a weeknight. And we will meet, in addition to that, twice in retreat format. We'll have a retreat near the beginning of the process and at the conclusion of the process. This year, we're not only having a concluding retreat, we're having a reunion for members of the previous 3 cohorts that will join this cohort. For those that, of course, wish to come back for the reunion, all of this is voluntary. We're primarily looking at the role of the CAO in his or her duties, but it's hard to examine those separate from the role of the institutional chief executive officer and from the role of the governing board for the institution. So we're very concerned about how we have to be. CAOs operate with their CEO and the board. So that would also be included in our work. We should confess that we do assign some homework in between the monthly sessions, readings. Once in a while, there's a brief written assignment. But most of what you do is you do it in the 2 hours that month. We are aspiring to create a community of practice who will, after they graduate from this, we will have a graduation ceremony, will join, if they wish, with no obligations, a continuing community of practice where they'll be interacting with these folks. I'm going to turn this to Vicki, but just let me say of the 4 facilitators, 3 of them are recovering former chief academic officers. And one of them is Dr. McGillen, whom you're about to hear from. And she has been a chief academic officer at not 1, but 2 institutions. And she has been truly respected and loved by the previous participants. And our 4th facilitator is an expert on what we call improvement science and is a recovering former professor of theater who views the work that chief academic officers do as being somewhat analogous to actors in a dramatic performance where we many of us have predictable roles, but we're trying to get to some unpredictable outcomes. So Vicki, why don't you pick it up and take what I've said at the foundation anywhere you want to go. I'm all ears.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you. And we had an interesting question in the chat about the distinction between CAO and provost. We really do mean chief academic officer. We are title agnostic. So if the highest ranking academic officer at your institution is a dean of instruction, you are the CAO. If the responsibilities for the academic work of the institution fall under the title of the provost, then the provost is the CAO, vice president for academic affairs, and everything in between. So we are open to this. We shared with you a couple of questions that we often ask our group right at the beginning about whether or not your institution is experiencing some sense of crisis around change, things not working, higher pressure for change, external forces shifting the ground underneath your feet. We also draw on the work from Goldstein, Hazing, Lichtenstein, because they emphasize the fact that most often at our institutions, institutions will respond by boutique responses for innovation. That is, they will grab one innovation idea and implement it over here, maybe another innovation idea and implement it over there. But true transformative innovation is an outcome of a system-wide process. This is why we want to work with the chief academic officer of the institution, because if the desire is to shift the level of innovation in the academic work of the academy, this is where that work is going to fall under. Go to the next slide, Katie. So our community process, our hope is that you will come out of this with an understanding of both theories and practice around innovation and change, as well as where resistance to innovation and change comes from within the academy. We hope you will build an internal team of fellow innovators on your own campus. Each of the chief academic officers in our community will generally select a project that they will work on throughout the 10 months, 9 to 10 months that we are together, working with an internal team of innovators as well, and develop a significant innovation and implementation plan for that. We also hope that you will be giving thought to how you can increase receptivity to CAO-driven innovation. We know that often when something is handed down, I'll say that in its kindest sense of the word, from higher administration, it is not always greeted with the greatest of enthusiasm on the part of our colleagues in the academy. And that is often comes from how often under pressures of instantaneous need for change, we tend to try to insist on things happening quickly. Most importantly, we hope we are providing you a safe space to share. Not only there live in our synchronous meetings and in our face-to-face meetings, but we have an ongoing listserv where very often our colleagues will post things and ask for feedback from the larger community as well. Next slide. We think of this as really a coming together of three important elements that make this particular community of practice work. One is that with the monthly meetings, we are truly hoping to build a sense of community amongst the CAOs. As Dr. Williams mentioned at the beginning, it is a very lonely job. There is only one of you on campus, and even if you're part of a system, sometimes that's a little bit more of a competitive than a peer relationship with your colleagues in the system. This offers the opportunity to hear from people who have no skin in your game, but have an awful lot of skin in the game of leading academic units on their campus. We bring to this a lot of the current work in improvement science, helping you to understand how to structure improvements within your academic communities. We also bring to this work a lot of focus on cognitive and neuroscience tools for developing an innovative mindset. That's where my background as a clinical psychologist comes in. I bring a lot of that. But mostly it's that chance to work with peers on big problems. One of the things that we also emphasize is that every single meeting, we reserve a period of time at the end of the meeting specifically where no recordings will take place during this period of time. We record it, so if you missed a meeting, you could potentially catch up on the conversation. But this part, there is no recording. And this is where anyone can say, I have something I'd like to bring to the group and I'd like a little feedback on. Those are wide-ranging and terribly important conversations that cover the full gamut of issues that chief academic officers address. Next slide. So as John indicated, there are monthly meetings, September through June. They take place in the evenings. We usually have scheduled these 6:30 to 8:30 Eastern time. So I do emphasize it is evenings on the East Coast. It is not evenings on the Pacific Coast, nor for our colleagues in Alaska who are in our community this year. We have scheduled our first virtual meeting already, just so that we can ensure that we have a time to get together, but we will also be conferring with all participants immediately upon them joining the community on what will be the best meeting time moving forward. And we have 2 in-person retreats here on the Blue Ridge, in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. Okay, and Katie?
Thank you, Dr. McGillen. So the fees for this community of practice are $9,250 all in, and that excludes the cost for travel and lodging for in-person meetings. So, and there are 2 of those, as Vicki just discussed. Those fees can be split into 2 fiscal years, and we do offer a discount for CAOs from under-resourced and underrepresented institutions. If you're interested to see if your institution qualifies, you can just email info@gardnerinstitute.org, and I will be happy to answer that for you. There is a brief application we do ask you to complete before you start this community. And that's just so that our facilitators, our wonderful facilitators, can get to know you a little bit and make sure that they're structuring the community of practice to best fit the needs of the people in the community. Felita?
Are there any questions? And while you think of your question, I'm going to ask Dr. McGillen or Dr. Gardner, either one, what what would you say to a CAO that's sitting on the fence, not quite sure they want to join? What words of wisdom would you share with them? Vicki, I saw you unmic first.
But I'm confident John has an excellent suggestion as well. But for me, and I say this from my experience at two institutions as a chief academic officer, in a time of strained resources, when there's only so much professional development dollars to go around, I am often trying to figure out how I can squeeze every value for the dollar out of the money that I have to share, have to spend for my faculty and my academic staff. And I'm probably more reluctant to think of spending it on myself in any way, shape, or form when I'm trying to do the best for all of my colleagues on the academic side of the institution. But I do want to emphasize that this is not just an investment in you in terms of your leadership. This is an investment in your institution. This is for you to lead innovative change at your institution and to create an innovation team at your institution. So our expectation is that you are taking all of this back and building back on your campus an innovation engine moving forward to enable real change to happen for your campus. So think of this not as an issue of an investment in you, although it is an investment in you as well, but an investment for your institution.
Thank you. Dr. Gardner?
Okay, I think you have a couple of options that I would consider, that I'd recommend you consider. One is you could write us and we could give you some people to contact who have been participants in this process before. And obviously they would be more objective than we are. And I would strongly urge you to do that. And if you wanted some from an institution like yours, I would specify that. You know, if you want a regional public university, or you want a research university, or a community college, or private, we can find you people from all of those institutional types. Also, if you wanted, you could have an individual conversation with any of us. And not only us, Vicki and myself and other members of our team here, but the two, Felita has not yet commented on her experience with us, but with the fourth facilitator, we have Dr. Brandon Smith. He would be glad to talk with you also. The final thing I'd like to say is when I go through this session this afternoon is making me think about what I was like before I became a chief academic officer. And I became that in 1983 now. That's 40 some years ago. And I was a full professor, and I had been at a university for 13 years. I'd been a program director. I'd been a faculty secretary of the university. I'd been a faculty senator, but I had never been a provost, a chief academic officer. And oh, did I need some kind of preparation that I didn't have. And I wish I had had something like this. I bet I could, if I wanted to make the time set for it, make a list of the mistakes I made early in my work that I could have prevented myself from doing had I had an experience like this. And basically, my chancellor told me that my job was to make decisions, and my job was what I was needed for was my judgment and my loyalty to the University of South Carolina and the people of the state. Now, that was all true, but in terms of operationalizing that, oh no. And he didn't tell me I was to be a chief innovation officer, but that's what I went ahead and tried to do anyway. So all of us who facilitate this, we've lived this, and we draw from that experience, but we have many other sources to point you to, especially to the other members of the cohort. The things you will hear your colleagues say, you will fall off your chair occasionally, and some of those we immediately stop the recording when we know this is where this is going. We got to, protect them. And anyway, I will say that of my normal work cycle at any given month, the 2 hours that I spend with these colleagues these are peak times for me. I really look forward to this. And Vicki and Felita and Brandon, we're doing this voluntarily. We don't have to do this. And So I invite your consideration. Happy to talk to you further. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd
Thank,
like to pick up on what my colleagues have been sharing, and I really want to share a bit on two costs, both financial costs and opportunity costs. And I am doing this because I am amazed sometimes when senior leaders at not-for-profit colleges and universities maybe are a little startled by the fact that we have fees when our financial model is the same thing as theirs. So I'm mentioning this not to belittle, but I'm mentioning it to say that we have truly benchmarked other opportunities, and a lot of them do not get at student success at all. And in the contemporary era where there are questions about the value of higher education and the purpose or role of higher education for any aged Americans, not just young Americans, we think you cannot pay attention to student success. Now, I base this not simply on benchmarking it, looking at entities like Harvard or ASCU or other entities that do similar but different experiences. And I assure you that our fee structure is one of the lowest amongst comparables. Sometimes we debate that because the value of the experience, we would say, is as good, slightly different, right? We're focused on student success. But we've also benchmarked from the standpoint of being engaged, particularly in some of the experiences that discipline associations do, particularly for department heads. Myself having sat in on a number of them by invitation, they do amazing jobs for preparing academic chairs and deans for all sorts of things. How much funding do you get for graduate students? How do you promote the tenure and promotion process? Things along those lines. We don't get at that. What we get at is by and large what they don't get at, which is how does a department head or chair, or how does a chief academic officer lean in towards transformational leadership for student success? Whether that's innovation with the CEO as the chief innovation officer, or that's a department head or a chair or a unit head who has been given responsibility for student success, but never really had the prep or the background, not unlike what John shared in his own CAO role, right? So I want to emphasize some of the differences and also the difference between cost from price and cost from opportunity cost. Because electing to do this means you are taking an opportunity to invest in yourself in ways that other experiences just don't do right now. And we think it's an important aspect of your work, arguably one of the most important aspects of your work in whatever leadership role you have. So thanks for letting me pipe in there. I really don't think I gave Fleet and Katie a choice. I just started talking, but I do want to get there, or did want to share that. So thanks all.
well, I was going to give you the last word anyway, so
All right,
that's
so we hope
okay.
you join us. Reach out, as John said. Write us, call us,
Enjoyed
carrier pigeons, whatever works.
Right.
We're here. We're looking forward to hearing from you if you have any questions.
So colleagues, thank you so much for co-hosting with me, and to everyone that attended, we appreciate you and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.